There is a unique kind of hurt that just cuts right to the bone. It's that moment when your own adult child judges you. And suddenly it feels like years, decades even, of dedication and love are just erased by a single sentence, or maybe even just a look. If you've ever felt like you're on trial, defending your entire life as a mother, then this is for you. We're going to get through this. It just feels so deeply unfair, doesn't it? Like you poured every ounce of yourself into this role, and somehow the verdict that comes back is bad mother. And that is such a heavy, lonely thing to carry. Okay, let's really dive into this.
I mean, what if this isn't really about you? What if the criticism you're hearing isn't an accurate report of what happened, but something else? A reflection of their own inner world? We're going to look at this from a completely different angle. And this isn't about making excuses. It's about finding some real clarity.
Look, the goal here is to figure out the difference between what's our real responsibility and when we've accidentally been cast in the role of a scapegoat. We're going to walk through 4 big truths grounded in psychology that might just help you see you were a much better mother than your child's memory might be telling them right now. So, let's start with the first truth. And this is something so basic, so fundamental, that it's almost always missed. Your number one job was to be the structure, to hold things together when the world was trying to pull them apart. Just think about that for a second. All those days you got up and functioned when you felt completely broken inside. All those nights you stayed up worrying, not because you wanted to, but because somebody had to. You were the psychic glue for the whole family. And here's the thing, nobody gives you an award for that because it's just expected. It's supposed to be as natural as breathing. So it only ever gets noticed on the rare occasion the mask slipped, those moments when you were just too human to be perfect. And this really shows you how memory works, psychologically speaking. It's fascinating, right? Your child's memory can latch onto the one time you had to say no, the one boundary you had to set, while the thousands of times you said yes, even when you were exhausted and running on empty, just fade into the background. Now, this isn't them being malicious, it's just how the mind works. It simplifies a really complicated past to fit a story that makes sense to them today.
The famous psychologist Carl Jung had a name for this. He called it the archetype of the great mother. And he said she has 2 faces. She's the protector, the one who provides safety, but she's also the limiter, the one who has to set boundaries and say no. You had to be both. You were the safe harbor and you were the one who had to draw the line. For a child, that can be confusing and even create resentment because they don't yet see that setting limits is a form of protection. It's all just 2 sides of the same coin called love.
And that leads us right into our second truth, the silent sacrifices. This is all about the things nobody ever saw. The things you quietly let go of so that your child could have a shot at things you never did.
Jung had another term for this, the persona materna. It's basically the social mask a mother has to wear. You had to look strong even when you were falling apart. You had to act like you knew what you were doing even when you were terrified and full of doubt. And the biggest irony of all? Today, you might be criticized for not being authentic. Back then, when being fully, vulnerably authentic was a luxury your family's survival just couldn't afford.
I mean, who were you before you were mom? What about that career, those dreams of traveling, that artistic talent? An entire generation of women put their lives, their very identities, on pause. The sacrifice was so common, it just became invisible. People don't see it as a choice you made, they see it as something that was just your duty. But it was a choice, and every single day, you chose that. Okay, this brings us to truth number 3. And this one might be the most liberating of them all. Your imperfections, your flaws, they weren't your failure. They were actually one of the greatest gifts you ever gave your child. I want you to really let this sink in. All that guilt you feel, all the nights you've spent worrying about the mistakes you made, that is not proof that you failed. It's proof of how much you loved. People who truly fail, who truly don't care, they sleep just fine. Indifference doesn't lose sleep. Love does. Think about it. Those moments you see as your biggest failures, when you lost your temper, when you were just too tired, when you didn't have the answers, what were you actually teaching? You were teaching that nobody's perfect, that love isn't about being flawless. You taught them that people have limits, that the world isn't always fair, but that we are strong enough to survive it. You are teaching them resilience, the most important lesson of all. And that brings us to our 4th and final truth. This is where we get right to the heart of why this judgment is happening in the first place. we have to talk about a powerful psychological defense mechanism called projection. So what is projection? To put it really simply, it's when we take our own stuff, our fears, our disappointments, our insecurities, and without even realizing we're doing it, we pin it on someone else. It's a way our minds avoid having to do the hard work of looking in the mirror. And guess who is the first, safest, most available screen for all of that unconscious projection? The mother. Always. As your adult child starts to face their own life's challenges, it is psychologically so much easier to blame their origin story, to blame you, than it is to face the emptiness or conflict they feel inside themselves right now. No, it's not fair, but it is a very, very common human defense. And this gets even more complicated because of something called affective memory. See, your child's memory of their childhood isn't like a video recording. It's more like a movie they're re-editing today based on how they feel today. So if they feel like a victim now, their brain will rewrite their history to fit that story. They're not necessarily lying. They're telling you their emotional truth, which can feel incredibly real to them even if it's miles away from the factual truth.
So, understanding all of this is a huge first step. But the last step, the most important one, is about moving from just understanding it to actually doing something with it. It's about finding peace. Not with them, necessarily, but with yourself.
Because here's the thing. As long as you keep showing up to that courtroom to defend yourself, you're agreeing that the court has a right to judge you. The real power isn't in winning the case. It's in walking out of the courtroom and refusing to stand trial in the first place. So how do we do that? Well, here are 4 steps to start reclaiming your peace. First, you can acknowledge their pain. You can say, "I hear that you're hurting," without saying, "Yes, your version of the story is the complete truth." Second, you lovingly hand the responsibility for their adult life back to them. Their happiness is their work now, not yours. Third, you have to fully, radically accept your own humanity, flaws, limits, and all. And finally, and this is the hardest one, you forgive yourself. You forgive yourself for not being a goddess. You forgive the human being who did the absolute best she could with what she had.
Your freedom isn't going to come from them finally understanding you or forgiving you. It's going to come when you give that to yourself. The peace you're searching for isn't an acquittal from their court. It's a quiet acceptance in your own heart. The real question isn't whether you were a good enough mother for them. It's whether you can finally accept the good, human, imperfect mother you really were for you.